Hello and welcome to World Talks. I'm your host, Sasha Farbach. Now, as the so-called 30-day ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine nears its apparent expiration, tensions are high, with Ukraine accusing Russia of multiple violations of the agreed terms. Now, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff are in Paris leading talks with European leaders and Ukrainian diplomats to chart the next steps. Now, with much hanging in the balance, we'll now explore the key takeaways from these critical discussions and the growing influence of France in the process and what all this means for Europe's security and the broader geopolitical landscape. I'm now joined by Romain Le Quiniou, Managing Director, Euro Creative, to discuss it all further. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. So let's start with the main takeaways here. I mean, this is a very interesting dynamic here. What are your perceptions here? What did we learn from this critical meeting?
We haven't learned a lot, to be very honest. What we see is that declarations from all sides seems positive. From the French side, also from the U.S. side, as well as from Ukraine, there has been feedback comments saying that there is convergence between the views of Washington and Europeans. Now, what has been discussed in the concrete terms, we don't really know. We know that we have been discussing about ceasefire, potential ceasefire, even if the situation remains very complicated, because we can see, at least from the European side, this is clear that there is no willingness from Moscow to provide and to agree and to join a ceasefire. So this is, something that is highly doubtable. And in the same time, we have been discussing about security guarantees for Ukraine. But the problem is still the same. At the moment, it's very unclear how the situation will be. And the position of the Europeans at the moment are that they can do something, they can provide security guarantees for Ukraine in the condition of a ceasefire. But we didn't really discuss what would happen between the US and the Europeans if there is no ceasefire. So at the moment, we can say that this visit is productive for the simple reason that it's important to talk and it's important for Europeans to be at the table of the negotiations. So this is also, we have to say it, a good PR movement. We know that the US is trying to show that there is progress on the negotiations. So this is favorable to them also. And we can see that there might be a momentum. Another discussion will be held in London, and we will see if there is concrete things going out of these discussions or not.
I mean, you touched on this convergence. You touched on also, I'm curious what France's role and President Macron, because I think if we look back the last few months, there's been really a lot of convergence in Paris, Macron stepping forward with strategic autonomy again with the nuclear umbrella. So what does this whole meeting have to play for in France?
Well, France and President Macron have been able to, come to the situation where the right words are said. The right words when it comes to Russia. President Macron and France are very clear. We are not anymore in 2022 and before 2022, where it was very ambiguous from Paris what we heard about Putin, what we heard about Russia. Now Macron is clear. Russia is the aggressor. Russia needs to be defeated in Ukraine, because if not, this will be a problem for Europe. France is back also because there is clearly a vacuum of leadership. There has been a vacuum of leadership at the level of the European Union. And President Macron has been skilled enough to basically play this role, even if we have to acknowledge that this role is not easy to play for Macron, because the domestic political situation in France is far from being perfect. So, but still, I think that also with the re-election of Donald Trump and, the wars we've been hearing over the past few weeks, over the past few months, there is more space for Macron and there is more space for European leadership to basically provide more answers which are decided in Europe, because there is the clarity now from everywhere in Europe that our relations with the US are evolving. We don't know to what extent, but there is the clarity and there is the acknowledgement that Europe really needs to get serious when it comes to defense, when it comes to security, when it comes to helping Ukraine, because this is about Europe's destiny. This is about Europe's future. And if we are not able to provide these answers, then we will pay the high price. For the moment, Ukraine is fighting, but tomorrow, if we are not able to support this fight, we will have to fight. So there is this willingness from Paris now to lead this process, to make sure that Europeans can be strategic. And it is true that Paris has shown some strategic maturity over the past few years, at least in the discourse. The problem now for Paris and for other Europeans is to find a way to not just talk, but also take some concrete decisions. And we know that we have political limitations, we have financial limitations, which make this whole situation much more complex. But this is crucial for Europeans, led by France, but not only, because we know that France has been...
On that subject, let me ask you about complexity there. Sorry to interrupt you, Romain, but there's also the bilateral. We have also the meetings with Pete Hegseth in the United States and the French foreign minister. You're talking about France playing a bigger role here. What are we looking at here in terms of the takeaways from that kind of meeting, and that sort of, is the United States listening more to France in this regard?
Yeah, the meeting between Minister of Defense Le Quiniou and Hegseth in Washington was mostly about what can France and Europeans can do about European security. It was especially about the preparation of the NATO summit in The Hague at the end of June this year. And basically, Hegseth said that Europeans and France needs to step up, and this has been a message that has been conveyed to Europeans for years and years and years, and now it's much more aggressive from Washington, but the situation has not changed. Europeans need to invest more in their defense and security capabilities. It's not just about supporting Ukraine, it's also preparing to be resilient, to be able to defend themselves, to be able to take the leadership of European defense and security. That's it. This is now a very clear path that the US is going to decrease its presence, is going to downsize its presence in Europe. What we don't know is that will it be done fast? Will it be done disruptively, or will it be done in a rational, negotiated, cooperative manner? And this is what we don't know, and this is what we need to be prepared for, which means to have a more serious discussion about how European chain of command when it comes to military is going to function. I believe that it has to be part of NATO, but we need to understand that the US is going to decrease its presence in Europe from the NATO framework. And in the same time, it means also about capabilities and what the European can provide, can scale up, and will basically close the gap with Russia at the moment when it comes to defense system and potential. And in the same time, how Europeans can prepare for the war of tomorrow, or at least can prepare to avoid the war of tomorrow, which means heavy investments in research, in innovation, and to be sure that Europeans are not behind when it comes to deterrence, when it comes to strategic capabilities.
Yeah, interesting you choice of words there. You talked about the war of tomorrow on a military basis. I want to ask also what you said about chain of command, this bilateral as well. But we also have Prime Minister Meloni in the United States. Now that's also significant. Now it seems that Donald Trump prefers these kind of bilaterals. What do you see this? Is this the future? What does this bode for Europe as well? And Meloni close to Trump, close to Musk as well. You have the French angle here. What do we expect of this takeaway here, and how do you assess these kind of meetings for the future?
Yes, there has been some critics and some fears when it comes to Meloni going to Washington, but I think it illustrates something that the Europeans are trying to play at the moment, which is what I would call a strategic disunity. Strategic because at the moment this disunity is made on purpose. So we try to send people, representatives, which can, on their personal relationship with Donald Trump or the US administration, can bring some rewards, can pass some words to the Americans. And I think that Meloni played this role. We know that Meloni and Trump are quite close politically. They defend same vision of politics to some extent, especially when it comes to societal values, when it comes to immigration, things like this. So these messages were strong yesterday in the meeting between Trump and Meloni because they have political agreement or common vision when it comes to these topics. But at the same time, Meloni tried to convey also messages from Europe, convey, not negotiate, because we know that Meloni is representing Italy, but was trying to, have this European approach. And it was about Ukraine, making sure that, again, the message is clear. Russia is the invader. Russia is the country that is at fault when it comes to Russia and Ukraine war.
Speaking of Russia, really briefly, I want to, it triggers another question I have, all back to the military escape here. Now, we had these recent comments by Polish President Andrzej Duda to Bloomberg, very much still seeking that French nuclear umbrella. But how do you see and sense this also with him looking continued support also for the United States? How does this balance here, the U.S. and France and the whole nuclear question?
I think it's one of the illustration of evolving positions in Europe and even in Poland, which is the country that is the most transatlantic, we could say, in Europe. So it means, I think it's a positive reaction, it's a positive declaration, because it means that Poland understands the way to balance transatlantic relations and the future of European security, knowing that the US remains the most credible guarantee for security. And today we are not talking about withdrawing of US nuclear umbrella, but at the same time, it's important that multiple options can add to the security of Poland, to the security of Europe. And this is exactly what Macron has been proposing and France has been offering to European partners, is to discuss on how the French nuclear deterrence can be utilized for Europe's increased security guarantees.
Interesting. So, Romain Le Quiniou, we say thank you. Merci beaucoup to you for all those insights today. Very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
And thank you for watching. That includes World Talks here, but stay tuned. Much more coming up on TVP World. Goodbye.